All right, guys, on this episode, we're talking punting categories. We're talking -1 ranks. We're talking about basically avoiding one category to buff the rest of your team. We're going to go through some examples on how to punt, give you a bit of information behind it, and I might have a special kitty cat in the studio with me tonight. Let's talk about it. G'day guys, welcome back to the Ball Logic Fantasy Basketball Podcast. I'm your host, the SC Braino. I've got a special kitty cat I mentioned at the start of the show in the studio with me, mate. Malley, you've had to commandeer some headphones from a family member to get this show going, mate. But, you know, commitment to the podcast, I rate it.
Or at least that's what I'm saying to you, and maybe I'm just slowly working in one new look, and this is who I am now. But yes, let's put the tiger on the table and point at it. I do have a pair of kitty cat headphones on, just for reference. My Beats didn't connect to the computer. The wife's ones didn't connect to the computer, so my daughter has come and saved the day and given up her podcast time by giving me these little darlings. And $8 from Kmart if anyone's looking to follow my trend.
I love it. It's it brings a bit of spice to the podcast, that's for sure. But tell me, we were having a conversation beforehand, and the podcast that you accidentally slipped in your ears was about a fantasy football, a guy going to a fantasy football, or couldn't go to his fantasy football draft. Tell me about that.
Yeah, just having my wife's headphones connected. She was listening to a podcast in the other room that I then got thrown into, which was a bunch of women cruelly mocking one of their husbands who got very upset, a little teary that he missed his NFL draft, and just thought that was a little ironic as I'm sitting here making a podcast about a pretend basketball league, and my wife's listening to a podcast in the other room about how that's an embarrassment and a red flag. But anyway, if you're here, you're one of us, and lean in, mate.
Lean in, yes. There's plenty of theme on lean in tonight when we're talking punting as well. You know, like I think we want to use this show, and obviously you're watching this show because you want to learn a bit more about punting. Maybe you want to understand the different categories that you can punt early. We're going to be talking and referencing our draft board a fair bit. You can get that in the link in the description below. Just become a Patreon member for less than $10 a month, and you can get access to the full draft board we'll be referencing tonight. But I mean, it's probably more so around buffing other categories, isn't it, Malley? Like, I think there's a misconception around punting, and there's a big focus on the category that you are avoiding. But realistically, you should be looking at the categories that you're buffing around it by sacrificing one of them.
Yeah, maybe punting's not the best word. We might have to come up with something else that kind of better suits what we're going for here. Because I think when you talk to less experienced players who have real lives, unlike myself, they obviously think that, oh, look how well I've done, and celebrate the fact that their team only averages 2.5 assists. And, you know, that's not really what this is about. A punt assist build isn't about getting your assist as low as possible and hoping the rest works out. It's about essentially ignoring that category even exists, and trying to, as you say, buff up the other ones. And I guess when you're drafting, there's really three ways you can go about it. You pick blokes that you just like and that you're going to enjoy watching, and you're happy to come 9th in your 12-team competition every year because you just like your guys. You can go best available, which is obviously pretty subjective, because best available, is that based on ranking? Is it based on past efforts? Is it based on future projections? So that's probably the second way. And the third way, which I know that you and I probably choose to go each time, is the punt strategy. And if you're starting for the first time in fantasy, you probably don't want to bite off more than you can chew and just try and punt one category, buff the other 8. But once you get into it, we had what's his name on the show the other day, Adam. Talking about Kingy. Thank you. Kingy's the king of punts, and I know that he, listening to his punts before, he'll punt 3 categories. You know, he'll lean real hard in, and as you said before the camera started rolling and the kitty cat ears went on, you only got to win 5 out of the 9. If you know your fractions well, that'll get you over the line at the end.
Yeah, that's right. Now, it just depends, obviously, on your settings of your fantasy basketball league too. You're not playing like total category leagues. You've got to try and accumulate as many as possible in those kind of leagues. So, punting doesn't exactly work amazingly in those total category leagues. But in the head-to-head, most category league wins. This is a golden strategy, and I guess it comes down to making sure that you're identifying the right kind of player to punt that category, especially in, when we're looking first and second round. It's really hard to isolate a player that's going to let you down in that period. You're not looking for someone who's going to really suck at a certain category. You're looking at, focusing on all the good stuff that player is going to get you as a top 24 player this year. And look, there's a few options. Before we dive in, Malley, we're going to talk about some examples of some players we'd focus on at different rounds based on our draft board and the category that we're punting. So we'll have a conversation about that. But -1 rankings as well, they play a part. What are your thoughts, or do you want to maybe explain what a -1 ranking is to someone who has never had a look at that before?
Yeah, for sure. So a -1 ranking basically takes the player's worst category, or the one that draws them back down the category rankings, and removes it, so you can kind of see a truer version of their overall worth. So you look at someone, the ultimate guy for this is Giannis Antetokounmpo. If you remove the fact that he's shooting a terrible clip on a whole heap of free throws, he absolutely skyrockets as a first-round guy. If you leave that in, because that's obviously a massive detractor of his game, he might slip, and you'll see him. You'll have to roll straight down to your 50s, 60s sometimes to find him and Zion, just because that's such a negative on their game. So an awesome idea. Go to a website like Hashtag. We use that all the time. It's a great reference point. Have a look at these guys. Play around with the -1s. See how much value you can get out of guys once you remove a category that's really a big detractor for them.
For sure. And I guess it comes down to also, you're not drafting a guy based on their worst category. You're not drafting a guy based on what they're not going to give you, right? You're drafting a guy because of the upside of the categories that they're good at, or the basketball that they're good at, right? And you used Giannis as an example. Poor free throws on 10.5 a game last year. He shot 617 from the line, doesn't shoot threes, and turns the ball over a fair bit because his usage is massive. And if you want to lean into a punt free throw build, Giannis is perfect in the first round. Doesn't matter where you take him realistically, but it also comes down to, if you got the first or the second pick, Malley, you're not leaning into a punt just for the sake of leaning into a punt. You're not forcing a punt. We had this conversation before we hopped online. You take Jokic at 1, you don't have to lean into a punt blocks build just because you took Jokic. You don't have to force Wemby to the 1 either if you think Jokic is going to be a better option. You just take Jokic, and then you see how the rest of the draft picks fall, really, from there.
And by that token as well, if you do take a Giannis, you don't have to pigeonhole yourself into doing a punt free throws build. It would be difficult, and you probably would end up spreading yourself too thin if you tried to recover that. And often you take away what makes them so valuable. If you try and even out all the things that, the deficit with Giannis Antetokounmpo, and try and get a bunch of guys after him, like a James Harden, who goes to the line 7-8 times a game and hits them on a nice clip, getting closer to the 900 kind of mark, then obviously there goes your field goal percentage, and you can end up playing catch up each time, and you end up with a team that is going to be a roll of the dice, a flip of the coin every week to decide if you're going to win it or not. The way I like to build my teams is have some categories that I know that I'm unbeatable or close to unbeatable in. Maybe there's a team or two I know I'm going to come up against, and they're going to give me a run for my money in blocks or rebounds. But then each week, and especially if you're someone like me who is an absolute whore on the waiver wire and just likes to bring him in and bring him out, you can save a category by using your 5, 4, 3, however many waiver pickups you have in a week, and go, I'm going to slip by. I'm going to get by this week in steals, and that's going to be my 5th category, and I'm over the line, and that's a W, and I'm on the books.
Yeah, I've played in a few leagues with you over the last couple of years, and you're definitely somebody who likes to whore the waiver wire, so to speak. So, I think there were some stats on ESPN over the years in the Ball Page League. Shout out to Carl and the group there, where they give you a bit of a rundown leaderboard kind of thing on who has the most waiver wire claims throughout the season, mate. You're always top 3. So,
Yep.
right man to have on this podcast, that's for sure.
Exactly right. And the only other category on the ball league that I usually win is most harassed opponents for a trade. You listen to other popular podcast hosts in our field who are very anti trading and the dangers of trading. Not me, mate. Don't come anywhere near me with that trash. I'm trading every day if I can.
Yeah, love it, love it, mate. Let's rip in. Hey, let's. I guess we can talk through and basically say, this is the category we want to look at. We can try our best together to form a starting five or maybe a top 60
Yep.
first 5 round picks to structure your team around that punt. And look, there are some players that don't need to punt. Maybe we start there. Maybe we don't even lean in yet. Maybe we start with the players potentially that you can start with that don't necessarily need a punt in your first round. Who stands out? Obviously, Jokic at number 1 is probably the main guy that stands out for me, where you don't
Yep.
need to lean into a punt and you can happily, pretty much back every category off the back of that. But is there anybody else in the
Yeah.
first round you're looking at that you don't need to
Well,
punt off the back of?
you skip one or two down, and that lands you at SGA. So Shea's another guy. He's a freakish guard who can get blocks. He gets rebounds. For a guy who shoots as many shots as he does, his field goal percentage is pretty delicious, and his free throw percentage is also pretty impressive. So he's another guy. I mean, this being said as well, I almost play 9 cat as an 8 cat before I've even started punting because I ignore turnovers straight away. The team that win turnovers is the team that have the worst constructed team generally, unless you're an absolute mastermind and you've crafted some beautiful team that can win. If you fill your team with a bunch of guys that don't get turnovers, it's because they're sitting on the bench. And, I know in my particular industry, in the education industry, we give out sometimes 16th place ribbons to kids in the old track and field events. And you'll get a bunch of those. I feel like the people who win the turnover category each and every week are the same guys who are ripping in and getting that 16th place ribbon. So to me, I know it's... That's it, mate. I lived on them. A healthy diet of those is what got me by. But, it's one of those things too that it generally is the category that if you absolutely flog someone 8-1, the one category that they've won is obviously turnovers. So to me, I just ignore that straight up. I'm playing 8-cat.
100%. And also, you look at the first 3-4 rounds even, and you don't see many players under 2 turnovers a game because they've got the ball in their hands. These are the best players on their team. We're picking the top 24 even, or even, let's top 24 I'm looking at right now. There is only one player in the top 24 when I do -1 rank that has less than 2 turnovers a game, and that's Tyrese Halliburton. For a guy who, has 9.2 assists per game is incredibly impressive. But for the rest of them, these guys are turning the ball over at a good clip because they've got the ball in their hand. Their usage is 30+%. Of course you're going to get turnovers. So you're right. When you're picking up a guy that's going to have the ball in his hand that much, he's going to turn the ball over. That's completely fine. And if I can get all of the counting stats, the efficiency's good, and I win a 7-2 or a 6-3, I guarantee you I'm losing turnovers. Not an issue. Not an issue at all. And a punt turnovers build, I don't even know whether it exists, realistically. I don't think you're looking at a guy in the 7th round going, I've got to find a guy that has the ball in his hands heaps. I've already probably got 5 or 6 decent picks before that are going to have everything else that I need anyway.
Yeah. And that's why an Aaron Neesmith never does much for me, because I know that's his little special area. If he's your number 1 guy in your team because of that fact, then good luck. Let me know when you win your fantasy league and I might pay a little bit more attention to the turnovers category. But besides SGA, the only other one that you could maybe start making a case for is a Kevin Durant. He probably sits outside at the moment of the first round, but he's another one that really just doesn't have many negatives. Field goal and free throw percentage, great. Points, great. His only category is category 10, which is staying on the court and games played. And luckily, I don't play a league where games played is a counted category. But, I'd say those are your 3 guys. If you land one of those with your first pick, the world's probably your oyster. You don't need to start leaning any sort of direction then.
Yeah, no, completely agree. I'm with you on that. I must shout out the ball page for their category there. additional category from last year in fouls. I don't know how did you feel about fouls last year being a category? They removed triple doubles, so that was the year or the multiple years before that, which I could get around because you got guys that then start to creep up the board a little bit, that like your Russell Westbrooks, and even Ben Simmons was a late round flyer in those leagues because you knew he could get close. Fouls, I'm not here for it.
Well, you're right, and it's probably the lesser of two evils for me. I didn't like triple doubles because you're right. There's only about 4 guys in the league who did it, and there'd be nothing worse than having that as the sway in your week. If you got a triple doubles guy, you're probably already flogging in assists, rebounds, points potentially anyway. It's nasty business, but fouls is no good either. I honestly don't. I think old Carl's done his best there to try and find something that works, and it might be a bit more experimentation because neither of them are good.
Yeah, no, 100%. And when you're playing 11 category basketball, it's nearly impossible to find a really nice balance. So he's done a pretty good job, and he's done a good job for a long time as well to maintain 11 cat.
He's a legend.
11 cat, 20 teams. It's it would not be easy at all. I tell you what, the hardest part, and a category for Carl needs to be collecting money from people in leagues because he would win that every week. I don't know how he does it.
He's a monopoly banker, that guy. I can tell he would have been doing that job when he was 4 years old.
Yep. But passes go, collects $200. That's
every day. I'm looking, before we look any more into specific players, probably the only other thing I wanted to kind of bring attention to people is the other thing you need to be cautious of when you're doing your punt builds is that there are some categories that naturally connect themselves to other categories. And when you begin punting, you may find yourself incidentally punting a second category without knowing. For example, the most players who have high free throw percentage also have high levels of assists. If you start ignoring those guys because you're building a bigs team, you may find that you're incidentally getting rid of assists by proxy. Same goes with field goal percentage and rebounds. They go hand in hand. So you might go, great, I'm going this punt rebound build. I've got Trae Young with my first pick. Things are looking up. And you might get to the end and find out that you're also averaging 4.7 rebounds and you're going to get trounced in 2 categories and you didn't sign up for that. Points and threes are another obvious one. Threes get you more than 2s. So if you're getting rid of that, you're throwing away 1/3 of potential earnings on your points. Steals and blocks, not that they feed into each other, but generally if you are ignoring defensive guys, you may find that although there's not a lot of players who have high steals and high blocks together, it's a special few, that you may incidentally miss out on one because you're trying to not avoid, but ignore the other category.
Yeah, I like that. And look, a lot of people aren't really going to worry about that too much, but I think for the advanced player out there, they're going to, you want to make sure you're on top of your punt. One, you're not punting for no reason. You're not punting just to avoid, like we mentioned at the start. But yeah, you're right. Like there's those incidental categories that suffer a little bit when you're pairing up a punt with another category. So yeah, and it's just a play style more than anything, isn't it? It's just like point guards and are usually for the most part going to have a better free throw percentage, but that's also then tied to assists. So these guys are facilitating the ball around the court a lot more. So
and that leads in. That's a perfect segue into the fact that the guys that are in the first round are either hyper specialists in a category, or they are your Wembys and your Shai Gilgeous-Alexanders who can do things beyond the capacity of their positioning. So, you've got Shai who can do big guy things. You've got Jokic who can do little guy things. And they're a special commodity. So do you want to have a look now at, let's say you pick up a Nikola Jokic, you pick up, you're one of the lucky people who get the first or third pickup. You get a Nikola Jokic, you get a Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, or you're on the other end and you decide you're going to settle for a Kevin Durant, maybe on the turn. What are you thinking about next when you're going to make that second pickup?
I guess there's 2 different answers. Like for Jokic, I'm not really thinking anything. I'm thinking probably close to best available for Jokic. I'm not punting when I get Jokic. You could argue that you could punt blocks if you really wanted to, 0.6 blocks a game for a center. And I think maybe that's another thing we probably need to talk about is its positional reference as well. So we're looking at potentially a Wemby who, 476 from the floor it's not that bad in comparison to a lot of other players in the first round, but it's bad when you talk about a center. Yeah. So, its positional reference is really important as well. Like Jokic, for 0.6 blocks for a guy who is at centre, that's bad positionally. Whereas, when you're looking at a guy who can get 6+ rebounds at point guard, that's out of position rebounds that you're going to get. So I guess that's probably something you need to factor in as well, as their position based on the comparison to the rest of what their position is producing. There's a few intricacies to, I guess, punting and draft strategy in general, I guess, and we try not to, dive too deep into that. But let's just say we take Jokic with one. You're looking at a guy around that 12-13 mark. I'm looking at our draft board at the moment, and there's a number of different options. And if I'm leaning into a no punt build, it's pretty hard to ignore a guy like Steph Curry. He's sitting at 13 consensus at the moment for us. He doesn't really hurt you in any categories. Field goal percentage is average. Turnovers we talked about, I ignore completely. The rest of it's fantastic, and Jokic doesn't hurt you in free throw percentage, whereas a lot of other bigs will. A lot of other centers will hurt you with free throw percentage. So 80% from the line's amazing. Another points guy doesn't hurt your free throws. Steph Curry shoots 93% from the line. He gets you the threes, and Jokic does too. The rebounds are offset by Jokic. The assists are still fantastic. For me, then I would decide on a punt blocks build, because if I'm taking Curry with pick 13, I'm potentially getting a block a game between two players now. So now I've got a bit more clarity around. Okay, cool. Now I can go in this direction where I punt blocks. Whereas if I went and took Karl Anthony Towns potentially at 13, then I wouldn't be punting blocks. So it's all dependent on maybe who you stack that first pick with.
So talk us through to the danger. Let's say, it might be hard to get the pairing of Steph Curry and Wemby. Let's say you pick up Wemby, and in the second pickup, you pick up LaMelo Ball. He's hiding at the end of the second round. Then you've really got yourself, the threes that you probably were lacking from Wemby and the assists. You've got blocks all sorted. If you can stay out there, you've got the steals from Melo. What's the danger you put yourself in if you get two guys who fill each other's deficiencies?
You get you're basically gone with an average player across 2 rounds. Like they kind of even each other out, don't they? Which means that you're not going to succeed in a specific category. You've filled the gaps of the first person with the second person. So, at the end of the day, the goal is to win 5 categories. If you're in a 9-cat league, right? Like, for me, are you winning a category? Going Jokic into LaMelo, you're winning assists, let me tell you that much. But, Wemby, are you winning assists? Maybe, maybe not. Like, I can guarantee that if you paired Jokic with LaMelo, you're winning assists. So it comes down to, I guess, are you filling the gap of the person that you got in the first round, or are you emphasizing the advantage of the categories you've already been strong in? Yep. That's probably the thing. It's like you've got an average 2 picks across from, you could target the strength of the first round pick as opposed to filling the gap of the weakness.
So you have a Wemby, you pick up LaMelo Ball, you're pretty well covered across all categories. Obviously, turnovers is probably out the window, but as I said, I ignore those anyway. You potentially have muted yourself because you have brought, instead of really doubling down and maybe instead of picking up a Triple J at that same kind of end of the second, start of the third round player, and then you would feel very comfortable then in your blocks, and you could probably take the foot off the pedal then and go, blocks I'm good with. I'll see if anyone else comes hard at me, because it's not about just watching who you're picking. It's about watching where your opponents are going. So in our mock draft the other day, the follow who ended up taking Wemby at first or second, I think we discussed the fact that his next best blocks guy in the end, I think, was someone like, I might be talking out my ass, it was like Santi Aldama or someone like that. It was some non-event blocks guy, and you were like, he'd really taken the thing that gave Wemby his superpowers in all but, I don't believe in one player being able to win you a category, but man, he'd get you pretty bloody close. That he'd basically taken what made him so powerful and completely castrated him and gone, well, sorry, don't worry about that then. The beauty in doing the Wemby and Ball back to back is that you don't have to make your tough decisions until you pick up your third guy. So you go then into the third round. Let's say hypothetically you've got Wemby, you've got at the back end of the second ball, which means you get to pick up someone at the front of the third, and you pick up a Tyler Hero. So there you've basically got your 3-pointers sorted. Points are looking absolutely delicious. Assists are looking pretty tidy, but rebounds are starting to fall off. He's a decent rebounder, but not amazing in his position again, Wemby. And then the blocks are already starting to get a little worrying. In fact, with a Tyler Hero and LaMelo Ball, the steals are starting to come into something that you can start thinking, well, is this another avenue that I lean into?
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. Like, I mean, to be fair to LaMelo Ball, like, he's not a bad rebounder, but you're right. Like, yeah, the steals at 1.1 are not exactly fantastic. I think, when he comes to, and we talked about -1 rank a fair bit at the start, like, he comes up nearly halves his rank. So he comes from 40 into 22 when you remove turnovers. But that's the problem with when you're talking about -1 rank. It just removes everybody's worst category, which ends up being turnovers for the top 24 players for the most part. So it doesn't give you a good picture maybe when you're talking -1 in the first 2 rounds. It probably gives you a better picture a little bit later on in your draft, really, doesn't it? Like, your guys that are incredibly inefficient outside of turnovers that don't have 20-25% usage on their team, that's when you get a good picture of what that -1 rank can do for you from 40 to 50 plus.
Clicking on that -1 rank button as well on a website like #basketball, you can see who the kings of neutral are. Because if you do that to someone like Kawhi, he moves from being, let's say, the 35th player to the 36th player. Like, there's absolutely no movement, which really shows the fact that he is a jack of all, master of none. And there's definitely places for guys like that. I love my safety guys who go, you just keep filling the cup halfway every time, every round, and let the big boys come in who are really specialists in categories and get it over the line. Whereas if you take someone like Walker Kessler, who all his value comes in 2 categories, rebounds and blocks, he's moved mightily because you go, all right, we're absolutely forgetting about points. We're forgetting about assists where he gets, he'd be lucky to score 2 in a week, collect 2 in a week, like that's another interesting part of the punt.
Yeah, absolutely. There's 5 players, funnily enough, in the top 100 at the moment that don't move at all when it comes to -1 rank. And it's your top 3, Jokic, Wembanyama, and SGA. And then it's 18 and 19, Anthony Edwards, Domantas Sabonis, off the back of last year when so Anthony Edwards does not move at all in -1 rank from 18th to 18th last year. Sabonis is exactly the same from 19th to 19th, which I thought was really interesting. And then everybody else has got some form of movement in the top 100. So, it definitely makes a difference for sure. But the turnovers sway things a little bit too much. If anything, I'm probably a guy that goes into #basketball and I just remove turnovers as a category to get an idea on what they're doing for me outside of that.
Yeah, that's an awesome bit of advice. I haven't thought to do that because my blinders are they're so ingrained upon my face that I don't see turnovers anyway. But that would definitely help if that was something you were picking up.
Let's play a bit of hypothetical, hey, to kind of move things along a little bit. I guess obvious punts in the first round, maybe instead of avoiding punts. We talked about Jokic and SGA being really good picks. We talked about Kevin Durant probably being a puntless guy. Who are the obvious punts, mate? I know there's one, but there's probably another couple in this top 12 anyway in the first round that you can really lean into a punt straight away.
Yeah, look, going through the list, Luka Doncic, even though his free throws have improved over the last 12 months, that's still something that is a concern in his game. Let's ignore turnovers as well. It is easier to repair than a Giannis or a Zion Williamson. Williamson. Man, I get that guy's name wrong every single time. I listened to our podcast the other week. I'm like, can I reach through this computer and slap my prior self? Then you've got Anthony Davis. He's probably in the neutrality range. Yes, he has some small deficiencies, but he's not really hurting you anywhere. There's no category where you're like, well, there goes that category. Assists aren't great. But he gets a couple of steals. He's obviously rebounds, blocks, points, percentages for a big guy. The thing that he has fallen off of at late would probably be threes. So that's probably his. I would assume you've got it in front of you that if you got rid of that in -1, that would create the biggest movement for him.
Yeah, and I'll jump in on that. Like threes, yes, that's fine. Like he shoots 0.7 threes per game. So look, he's not getting you a three a game. But in saying that, you've also got to look at what you can get off the waiver wire too. And I find like threes are the easiest thing to get off the waivers. So for me, I'm probably never leaning into a punt threes build, if anything. But in saying that, if I did, it wouldn't be an issue at the back end of your draft. You can find guys at 140, 150 who can get you 2 to 3 threes a game. A lot of these guys, I mean, you look at Isaiah Joe from last year. He was the perfect three streamer in week 19 in week 20 to win your actual league at the back end of the draft. Also because SGA ended up getting a rest a fair bit through that finals period. I know that I didn't want to bring it up on this show, but I have to, that I knocked you off in one of the grand finals that we had. And that was because the only reason I won that is because Shai Gilgeous-Alexander copped a rest in the final couple of games of that finals week. So Isaiah Joe ended up being the guy that ended up carrying me through because I streamed him in and ended up winning threes category off the back of him. So,
Are you familiar, my friend, with the butterfly effect? That, one small change in the course of history can have huge effects. Well, basically, you knocking me out is why I have to have these kitty cat earphones, because if I would have won those dollars, mate, I'll be rapping. And what are the things you've got on, mate? You look like you work for NASA. You can hear things in other people's podcasts with those bad boys. Amazing.
Yeah. No, the beauty of it is that I don't have to listen to my wife bagging out fantasy football draft people. So that's the benefit of these headphones. They don't connect to what my wife is listening to. Yeah, it's a good world to live in. But yeah, look, I guess threes are easy to find. Points are hard, and assists are hard to find at the start. At the end of the draft, you're not going to find assist guys at the end of your draft. And you're probably not going to find big points guys at the end of your draft. So those are probably the two categories you're going to get early. If you're punting them, I don't hate that. I don't hate a punt points build. I don't hate a punt assist build because it's either early or never. So you can make that call as well.
And that's really the depth of the fantasy game that we play is, and that's why we can have so many episodes coming out each week, is because there's probably 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different mini directions we could have gone off in this show and talked about positional scarcity, talked about category scarcities, talking about not worrying about 3-pointers because you can get them off the waiver wire. Like, these are all shows on their own, and we'll lean into, again, key word of the day. It's like watching an episode of Sesame Street where they got to keep using the same word over again. The lean in. If that's what you guys want to listen to, let us know, because we're happy to do episodes on any of that stuff. We obviously know that we like to talk. Then after Anthony, we've got Giannis Antetokounmpo. We've already talked about him. Cade, clearly, if you are you and I and you're really worried about turnovers, that would be the thing, because he loves a good turnover. That guy just throws the ball in the air and hopes someone in his own team gets it. How about Trae Young? What are you punting with him?
Oh, look, it's field goal percentage, really, isn't it? Like, for the most part, he's never seen a shot he doesn't like. 4-11 from the floor last year. Obviously, turnovers come with that too, right? Like, he's a guy that has, 30, close to 35 usage on his team. Yep. It's more, and we can get into, we've already done the Atlanta Hawks preview, but we could get into, maybe the potential that Trae Young becomes a, top 7 guy. Matrix is very high on him. I'm looking at our draft board right now. Matrix has him at 7. For the rest of us, we've got him at 10 or 11.
Double digits, yep.
Yeah, so for me, I'm looking at field goal percentage because he takes so many shots, and let's face it, I'm an Atlanta guy, but Trae takes some bad shots. And for the most part, the last few years, that was because he's probably the only guy that could, take over a game on that lineup. Now he's probably not. So I'm interested to see how he goes this year. But yeah, field goal percentage is a very obvious punt. Same with James Harden. If you're taking him in the first round, field goal percentage for those two are probably the guys that stand out for me as, you can just wipe it. Just get rid of it. Maybe Luka's starting to borderline that with 450, but I don't think you need to lean into that yet. But Harden and Young, at 410, 411, they're the guys that you can go, cool. I don't care about shoring that up anymore.
Now, Harden's an interesting one too because the dude's a bit of a chameleon. He just blends into whatever's going around him. If he
Yep.
needs to be a guy to put up 25 points, he'll put up 25 points. If he's a guy who only needs to score 8 points for them to get a win, but he's eight with 13 rebounds, 13 rebounds, 13 assists and like 7 rebounds and a couple of steals, that's what he does too. A guy like that is a little bit hard to plug
Yep.
because depending on who's out there with him, will depend very much on what kind of statistics he's going to be able to bring and what kind of categories he's going to be able to fill. So he's a bit of a tricky one. We talk Carl Anthony Towns. Probably for him, it's assists. And I mean, there's separate worries this year with him about how many minutes and what kind of role he's going to play. I was very surprised as you saw my eyebrows raise very close to the top of my kitty cat headphones before when you said that young Anthony Edwards was a guy that the needle doesn't move much on the minus ones.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting as well. I'm looking at his stats right now, and he's not a great field goal guy. He turns the ball over a fair bit. He's not a blocks guy. But to be fair, like there's no one expecting him to be a blocks guy when you're a point guard, shooting guard. No one's expecting him not to turn the ball over when he is the guy that has the most usage on the team. He's not a big rebounds guy, but in saying that, 5.7 rebounds in his position is good. So it's more, yeah, you talked about, scarcity and positional scarcity and category scarcity. That probably fits in perfectly. You shot 4 threes a game or hit 4 threes a game, 27 points. Doesn't hurt you at free throw. Doesn't really hurt you anywhere. So that's probably where it is. He doesn't overly hurt you to a point where you need to look at a category and go, I need to punt that right now because it's terrible.
Yep. And yeah, again, that gives you some flexibility. And I think, with someone like that and you're picking up someone else who's neutral, there's not very often where I make a full 100% commitment to my punt until after I picked up my third round guy. And then I've got that breathing space to go, let's look what my competition are doing. Let's have a look at what I'm doing. What can I give up on now? And what do I need to start leaning into so that I get my 5 categories to win me each week?
It's at the end of the day, that's all you're looking to do, isn't it? You want to win most categories, and 5 is all it takes for the most part. That is and we'll always reference 9-cat formats, 12-team 9-cat formats, because that is the standard format. You only need 5. So, and if you're in 11-cat, you only need 6. So, at the end of the day, if you need to sacrifice some others, this is exactly why this show's been put together, is because this is a genuine league-winning strategy if you can get it right, but you can genuinely fuck it up as well.
Yeah. And I know this episode's been bloody hard to hold on to like a bucking bull because we're going left, right, center, up, down. We're going underground, above sea level. We're going all over the place. But you bringing up the fact that we talk 12, 8-cat, 12 team, 9-cat, 12 team, is that if you're playing in a points league, not much of what we're saying in this episode is really relevant to you because that's not something you need to concern yourself with. If you're doing Roto, which is a league that a format that I don't play, that's another thing you probably don't really need to be worried about. So I just thought I'd give those T's and C's now as well.
Yeah, good shout.
Probably should have done that in the first 3 minutes.
You should have. Maybe we need to kind of clip this bit out and put it to the front somewhere. But yeah, look, realistically, it's, for the most part, most of our content's going to be 9-cat content, but we will do some points league stuff at the back end of the preseason, and I'm sure we'll do some auction drafts and some fun stuff as well, just to shake up the content a little bit. But you're right, we have gone in a few different directions, but there is a lot of nuances when it comes to understanding how to punt and the different strategies and mindset around, how you look at the first 2 rounds and punt. Is there anything else, mate, that you wanted to cover? Because I think we've got some other episodes potentially in the bank that we can do that are maybe more specific.
Yeah, no, just finishing off that first round, just for the sake of putting a bow on it. Devin Booker is another guy that's probably this season maybe going to take a little bit of a fall again in his field goal percentage. That's not something that's a huge concern for him, like some of the maybe other guys that are going to follow in this second round. Assists, I'd say, are going to go up, and they were at a pretty good spot point anyway, so there was no real punt potential in that area. Rebounds, maybe. So he's another guy that there's less and less maybe certainty about what it is that you should punt and what direction you should be leaning until you get into that second or third pick. And then we've got KD here and Steph Curry. KD we talked about before. He is, again, if you go onto our friends at hashtag, He doesn't have a red category on the board, meaning that he's above league average in everything that he does. I think turnovers, actually, to be fair, because he, again, for a big man, he holds the ball a lot and distributes and brings it down the court. And then Steph Curry, obviously a guy whose field goal percentage for a point guard who takes as many shots as he does isn't a tragedy like his compadres in Trae Young or James Harden. Blocks are definitely something that he just isn't about. That's not part of his game, so that's probably the direction that his punt would go. You're probably falling out on that. My last philosophical question for you before I've run out of things to say, because this is something I always contend with in my own mind, and I just want to see how you approach it. So you're 3 picks in, you're coming up to your 4th pick. Your punt is looking obvious. Let's say your punt blocks, okay? And then you get into the 4th pickup and there's someone who's absolutely fallen. Let's say it's Triple J. And you're like, what's going on here? Do you abandon ship and give up on your moral stance of this is something that I'm not really interested in because someone is falling? And then you find that you're maybe damaging yourself? Or are you an OG who just steers the course? You just palm him in the face and move on?
I think it also, we talked a lot about at the start of the show about you're not avoiding a category, you're buffing the others. And I guess when it comes to Triple J, I'm looking at the other categories going, is he going to help me, or is he the best option in the other categories around the guys that I could pick? I mean, Triple J is not exactly a huge points guy. Ja Morant missed a fair bit of time last year at different times, so Triple J got a bit of a boost when in usage and in scoring when Ja was out. No Desmond Bain this year is a difference, so that's an example you probably need to look into. But yeah, for me, I'm just looking at guys around that mark and going, all right, cool. If I'm punting blocks, is Triple J going to help me more in points? Is he going to help me more in rebound? He's not a big rebounds guy. Is he going to help me more in assists, in steals, in the other categories that I think I've already built up really well to actually win me a week? That's what I'm probably looking at. So I'm more than happy to let a falling guy disappear if his best category is the punt category, if he is still not the best on the board at the others that I'm looking at.
Yeah, and fair point. And I think that ties us up really nicely there, bringing us around to our original point that you're not necessarily avoiding something, you're just really avoiding it in the sense that you're finding other ways to build your team up and try not to spread yourself too thin, because nobody wants a piece of dry toast with a thin corner-to-corner spreading of jam. You want that big lump of jam right in the middle, don't you, mate? And look, because you guys don't pay me enough, my poor little light that I got in my Kmart starter pack's gone out. So I'm here sitting and podcasting in the dark. I've got my little tiny light thing, my ring light. I've got my kids' headphones on, mate. I don't know. I think I might have to go on
you need a pay rise, mate,
and go on one of these high-end podcasts, or at least go in the direction of maybe a little fetish podcast with my cute kitty ears on.
Mate, I'm sitting here with a green screen and 2 ring lights and double screen, and I'm feeling pretty good. And poor Malley's sitting there in the dark with his kitty cat headphones. That's a good place to leave us, I reckon, mate. We're gonna have to give you a pay rise too. People are gonna have to make sure they check this episode out, and if they wanted to, I reckon we've covered a fair bit of maybe mindset and psychology around punting, more so than telling you exactly which players to get. But I think we can probably lean into maybe a future episode or two with the rest of the crew. I think we were talking before we went online around, potentially there's 3 of us that hop on and we could look at punting different builds and make a bit of fun of it, turn it into a bit of a game and see which team comes out best in terms of projections. So I think that might be a good idea to come up with.
And we've really done 1,000 holes 1 foot deep this episode, and we probably need to do that 1 hole 1,000 foot deep in future episodes to dive in a bit. But yeah, we've had a little bit of everything. We've laughed, we've cried, we've worn silly headphones, so yeah, it's all good, mate.
And lights have turned off. And that's what we'll do here for this episode, guys. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments below. Hit the subscribe button if you want to see more of our content moving forward, and hit the like button if you like what you saw tonight out of the headphones specifically. I reckon that deserves a like in itself. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you for the next episode. We'll catch you then.
All right.